Happy Independence Day, everyone. Funnily enough, we're going to be talking about Englishman James Okonkwo, who has declared his independence from the University of West Virginia.
You are Locked On Tar Heels, your daily podcast on the UNC Tar Heels, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, it's Tuesday, July 4th, 2023. Welcome into the Locked On Tar Heels podcast, the only daily North Carolina show out there. Yes, even on a holiday, we're coming at you. My name is Isaac Schade. I'm your host, and I want to thank you for making Locked On Tar Heels your first listen or watch every single day. Coming up on the show today, we are talking about James Okonkwo, and also want to talk about some stuff with Drake Powell, Brady Manek, and because it's Independence Day, I want to give you some of my favorite July 4th traditions. But before we get to all of that, we do need to spend some time talking about James Okonkwo. If you were with us on Friday's show, I know you everydayers were locked into that. If you weren't, go back and check it out. If you're a visitor to the show or it's your first time, welcome. So glad you are here. But Coach Pat Kilby and I on Friday's show talked ever kind of so briefly about Okonkwo, because at that point, it was Mohamed Wague was the kind of my main focus of the West Virginia transfers that I thought Carolina should go after. And then obviously over the weekend, it comes out that not only has Carolina been in touch with him, but they're going, a visit has been scheduled and all of this is in the works. So that means we need to spend some more time looking at Okonkwo and what he might mean for Carolina. And I want to hit more on that official visit in a little bit because there's some interesting stuff there. But first, let's talk about Okonkwo, who he is, what he does, and all that. He is 6'8", 240, so shorter than Wague, but thicker than Wague, or at least sturdier. He is from England, specifically Maidenhead. It's about 2.5 hours drive from where I was born in Selston, England. And seriously, how funny is it that it's Independence Day where we're talking about a Brit maybe being a person that could join the Tar Heels? Really funny stuff there. Anyway, he came over to the States in August of 2020. Poor guy, really terrible timing there. But what's interesting about Okonkwo is he's not a heralded recruit. And part of that is because he's a guy that was first and foremost a tennis player, and only in somewhat recent years has taken up basketball. So he's still very much picking it up, learning it, and becoming a basketball player. So he's someone that projects to have some good potential upside that you never know, with just the right training and development and weight training and all of that, could really, really blossom. Another thing you need to know about Okonkwo is he's actually, although he is going into his third year of college, his junior year is actually should be just going into his freshman year. He was originally part of this class of 2023. That's going to be freshman right now, like Zayden High, right? But reclassed not 1, but 2 years. And so came to college as a 17-year-old as part of the class of 2021. My understanding is the original intent was him to redshirt that first year at West Virginia to make, kind of get back close to his actual class and then get back on that. But ended up playing as a freshman, a 2 years reclassified freshman at West Virginia, and so has now played 2 years. So not only is he somewhat of a newcomer to basketball, but then also didn't take a redshirt year that people thought he would, and so is a young man as well. And so there's a lot of strikes against him on that side, but it projects in a really potentially good way from a development standpoint. And also that means, as you would assume based on the counting, that he has 2 years of eligibility left wherever it is that he goes. Remember, he would not have COVID eligibility. That runs out with like RJ Davis's class. So 2 years at West Virginia and then 2 more years wherever he winds up, whether that's going back to West Virginia, which I haven't necessarily heard anything that he might do that, or going somewhere else. What does Okonkwo do? Well, in 2022-23, this past season, averaged 2.5 points, 3.2 rebounds in about 11 minutes per game. So kind of similar to Wagi, who we talked about last week. Didn't have a ton of playing time this past year. West Virginia didn't start any games, but did play in 31 of West Virginia's games. So is on the court every game doing something as he grows. 57.4% on field goals, led West Virginia in blocks, albeit just 22. I think that says something about probably West Virginia more than it does about what Okonkwo was able to do. Just 22 blocks in 11 minutes a game was their team leader. So average 0.7 blocks a game. In his career at West Virginia, played 20 minutes or more only twice. And so, again, just somebody that's needing development and growth. He's not a three-point threat, has taken a couple, has never made one. But you're not getting him for that. You're getting him as depth in your front court. Okonkwo's career high was 10 points, which he did against Oklahoma back in February. Actually was a double-double, one of two games in his career where he's also notched 10 rebounds. And so had 10 points, 10 rebounds in 14 minutes in that game. So the capability is there. You keep hearing me say this, but it is some growth that he's got to do. And had one other game with double-digit rebounds. That was also a 10-rebound game against Texas Tech, actually earlier this year on my birthday, January 25th. Something special about that day. No, I'm just kidding. But the win with getting Okonkwo is more about what he can bring defensively and with his athleticism, and is not the same as Wagi from West Virginia in terms of the presence of the shot blocking, just in terms of his body, but is able to do it from kind of an athletic standpoint. Now, I said on Friday's show with Coach Pack that in whether it's Muhammad Wagi or James Okonkwo, I was more excited about Wagi and what he can do and what he can bring in terms of fit. From a long-term ceiling standpoint, Okonkwo might have the higher ceiling. It's hard to know because he's so early into his development. But for what North Carolina needs next year, I remain that I think Wagi is the more helpful because he can bring that big-bodied help in that way. But listen, again, with Okonkwo, he is 6'8", he is 240, and so there's a lot of possibility there. He could come in and would be a front court addition. It's just that I think Carolina needs more help at the 5 than they do at the 4. And so unless he could be a small ball 5, right, like kind of Norchad Umir from Miami sort of thing, it's just interesting to see what kind of role he would have in North Carolina's depth next season. And again, we've talked about this with several people. Maybe he is kind of a drafted stash where he comes in and you stick him on the bench knowing that he might help out this upcoming season, but might be more helpful in future seasons. But would be some great insurance in case Carolina has injury issues or foul issues or whatever it is. So again, you need bodies for practice as well. And I think he, while isn't as tall as Armando, is somebody that could push him in the post just because of his size and weight. And so that would definitely be a win. Now, James Okonkwo has scheduled a visit to North Carolina, but it's still 3 weeks away. What is going on with that? I'll tell you about it and what's up with this weird timeline, and we'll do that in just a second. But first, I need to tell you that this episode of Locked On Tar Heels is brought to you by FanDuel. Take your first swing at betting MLB on FanDuel and get 10 times your first bet amount back in bonus bets, up to $200. That's right, just bet $20 and you'll land $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. That's $200 you can spend betting everything from the money line to the over-under to who's going to hit the first home run of the game. And this all comes on an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Plus, when you win, you can get paid instantly. There's no better place to bet on MLB than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So sign up today and visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get up to $200 back in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, official partner of Major League Baseball. All right, folks, I know it's a holiday week, but make sure you stay with us all week long. Got great shows coming up for you. And remember, there's a brand new way that you can submit your listener questions. That's a way for you to actually get on the show. You can email a video to lockedontarheels@gmail.com, just 10 to 15 seconds. Introduce yourself, where you're from, and ask your question. Love it. We can get it on the show. In fact, we're going to have our first one of those coming up later this week. All right, let's get back into talking about James Okonkwo, because as I said, he does have a visit scheduled for North Carolina. We learned over the weekend from some reporting from John Rothstein as well as Adam Zagoria. And between the two of them, we learned that Okonkwo is going to visit from the litany of schools that he's heard from, going to visit North Carolina. That's scheduled. And then from Texas A&M. As of this recording, I don't have a date for the A&M visit, but those are the two schools that he is down to. Now, what's interesting about this is that when we heard the date for the North Carolina visit is July 24th. And when I first saw that, I was like, maybe that's a typo. Maybe just accidentally put a number 2 in there, and it's actually supposed to be for the 4th. But no. It legitimately is scheduled for essentially 3 weeks away from now. Part of this is because, or not part of this, this is because Okonkwo is competing for a roster spot on Great Britain's FIBA Under-20 team that is going to be part of the Euro Championship starting this coming Friday. Remember, we talked last week and on Monday's show about Ian Jackson competing in the FIBA Under-19 World Cup. Well, this is the Under-21 about to go on, at least for the Euro Championship side of it. And Okonkwo is trying out for his team. And he's actually back in England for that. And so, it's the scope of what has to happen sometimes is that this pushes back his visit all the way towards the end of July. And then, it's just a couple short months after that before the season starts, even less time before school starts. This is college basketball right now. This is college athletics right now, that rosters might be in flux essentially all summer long. And it's just part of what we're going to have to deal with. But I'm here to help you navigate all that. Now, I do have to wonder if Okonkwo doesn't make that team, might he push up his visit? We'll have to wait and see on that one. Here's the problem with having to wait for a while. And a friend of mine, Steve Gorton, and I had this kind of conversation about this on Twitter after it came out. Is he says, I'll just kind of quote what Steve said to me. My concern with Okonkwo is that because the Heels have to wait until July 24th for him to visit, since he's out of the country, all eggs are in one basket. If he picks the Aggies, Texas A&M, too late to get anyone else. My thought is they should offer multiple guys, and the first guy who takes it will be the 11th guy. And so I'm right with Steve on this. It's like the problem with Okonkwo or waiting on that is if you're just looking for one more roster spot, and there's other guys out there that you might be interested in right now or that might be interested in you, I don't know that you want to wait around 3 more weeks for all that to come through and all that news, to figure out like, okay, let's get him on the visit. Let's figure out, is he coming or is he going to go to A&M or maybe somewhere else back to West Virginia? Who knows what's going on there? And so you're kind of hamstrung because of this timeline. But I do like this idea. It's just like regular recruiting out of high school. Sometimes you offer multiple guys and it's like, hey, you just need to know that we're going to be in conversations with some other people too. And whichever one of them takes it, whoever it's basically first come, first serve. Now, here's another scenario is that, again, Carolina does still have 3 scholarships open and available. And so it could be the kind of thing where you keep pursuing some others with the understanding for the whole roster and for that person that, hey, we're going to be having this visit with James Okonkwo at the end of the month. If you commit and he commits, that's 12 roster spots. So Carolina does have the space for it. It's just, can you keep all those people happy? That continues to be the question, and the wondering is, what do you do with that? So again, that's why the timeline is so far out. Remember, typically these transfer portal recruitments are microwaved, right? Like it's like, oh, I'm interested in you. I'm going to come 2 days from now to be on your campus. So there is that. Now, here's the thing, though, with Okonkwo, I mean, from everything I've seen, right now it is North Carolina and Texas A&M. There's no one else in the mix currently. It's going to probably be one of those two schools unless something else pops up, which is another reason that you kind of like, I don't know about this 3-week timeline before your visit. That gives other coaching staffs the opportunity to keep working to get in there with that. Now, a potential piece of good news for North Carolina, at least on the battlefront with Texas A&M, is that literally on Monday, A&M picked up a commitment from a front court transfer coming over from UMass. And so I know that you can always continue to fill out your roster, but that is essentially the same position that Okonkwo would be playing. And so it could be good news for the Tar Heels is that maybe A&M's like, hey, we got our guy, we're done and out. And in which case, that could be good news for the Tar Heels with Okonkwo. So we'll keep our eyes and ears on this. We'll see if he makes the England under-20 FIBA team and then where things go from there. But in the meantime, we got 3 weeks to still look at, is Carolina going to be in the mix for other players? Well, folks, Drake Powell's stock continues to climb at a precipitous rate. We got some really cool news for Brady Manek on Monday, and I want to give you some of my favorite July 4th traditions. We'll wrap up the show talking about those things in just a second. All right. Last week and over the weekend wrapped up the NBPA Top 100 camp. That's the NBA Player Association, basically. Their Top 100 camp. They had invited like 100 of the top elite high school players to come, and Drake Powell, amongst many others, names that we've talked about on the show, was part of that. But I want to highlight him because we've talked multiple times about his growth, and it just continues to be wild. So this NBPA camp was June 26th through July 1st. And there's obviously a lot that we could unpack from that camp in terms of guys Carolina is targeting. But I want to highlight right now Drake Powell. His ascension kind of continues to remind me of Kobe White. Remember, he's somebody that Carolina didn't initially think was going to be a one-and-done guy, was a multi-year dude, but then just like kept going. And then everything from as soon as he was getting on campus, the coaching staff realized like, oh, Kobe White's something different that maybe we didn't quite fully realize or recognize what we had with him. But here we go, and here we are, and he's going to probably be a one and done. Now, it feels like the news about Drake Powell has been more quick than that. Like I don't feel, or at least I don't remember getting as much of that about Kobe while he was still in high school. But you hear my point where it's like, oh, Drake Powell is rising at a rate that we didn't see coming. And so 247 Sports, Travis Branham wrote about Drake after the second day of this camp. So like glowing words, glowing reviews. And I want to highlight some of those. I'm not going to bore you with all the details, but I want to mention some of them and talk about some takeaways I had from that. Kind of his headline for this part was, "It's still not too late to buy stock in Drake Powell." And I mean, that alone is awesome. So Branham says, quote, "Powell has been one of the biggest stock risers in the country over the past 18 months, and he is only continuing on this trajectory." And here we go. "He has gone from a top 75 ranked prospect up inside the top 10. And I have said it before and will say it again. He probably isn't done rising in the rankings just yet." What? So we've talked about Drake Powell was in the mid 70s, has now jumped into the top 10. And I kind of thought, okay, we're probably good there. That's the landing spot. If anything, maybe it's like, okay, we've overblown it a bit. Maybe he falls down a spot or two. But Branham's saying what I'm seeing out of Drake Powell is telling me that he's only going to continue to go and move forward. He's not done rising yet. And so, I mean, if that's the case, he's moving into Ian Jackson territory. Remember, Ian is ranked 5th in this class at 247, and Drake is just outside of that, but still within the top 10. And so Carolina, it's possible, could wind up when all is said and done with two guys that are top 5 players in this class. And you love to see that type of movement. You just hope that Carolina can hold on to him. Now, what we know about Drake Powell is that he is this defensive elite defensive player. And so how is it that he continues to rise? Well, it's because of the other side of the court. Let me read another thing to you from Travis Branham. He says, on Thursday morning, Powell channeled his aggressive side and, check this, started putting his foot on the gas on the offensive end, being much more assertive. He showcased his ability to handle, create, pass, and most notably, and I would add most importantly, make shots. He made shots off the catch and pull from mid-range and from three while also showing off that elite defensive ability. So we've known about Drake Powell's defense. But man, if this offense is truly catching up as he says it is, and I mean, he's listing all these things: handle, create, pass, assertiveness, aggressiveness. And everyone is looking for basketball players who can make shots, who can fill it up. That's why Cam Johnson is in the NBA and getting that 4-year, $108 million contract, because the dude is just can hit shots. So if Drake Powell is adding this to his arsenal, I mean, as of the time of that writing from Travis Branham, Powell was shooting over 50% from three at the camp. Like that's not going to be always a thing. But what you love about Drake Powell is he's continuing to fill out his tool belt with multiple ways to impact and affect any game, whether he's scoring or not. And you think about it with guys Carolina has had on the wing at shooting guard or at small forward. That's been one of the issues recently is Carolina has had guys who are high-level defensive-minded players, but the offense is kind of a bonus when they would bring it along. With what Drake Powell is doing, it's not going to be that. He will have that defense, but is going to be able to deliver not just bonus, but relied upon offense on the other end. And the nice thing is when he's playing with guys like Ian Jackson and whomever else it is, he doesn't have to be the main offensive threat. He can just be one of the offensive threats. And that, for me, is a win. So, Drake Powell, Carolina has a diamond in the rough that the rest of the nation is starting to recognize, and I am glad that he's staying home in state to be a Tar Heel. Now, summer league, I should say, started off on Monday night. Not yet the official NBA Las Vegas one with all 30 teams in attendance, but just some of the mini summer league stuff that you see earlier in the week. And we got news on Monday morning that Brady Manek was joining the Hawks summer league team, the Atlanta Hawks. And I continue to think, I just talked about guys that can shoot and score. Brady Manek is one of those. And it's just like, man, somebody give this dude a shot and an opportunity to even just be in the G League or something, right? And it just feels like he could and should get there. And so excited to see that, not only just because he's getting this opportunity, but because I'm an Atlanta boy. I love the Hawks and what they do. Now, one of the things that I said I want to talk about is because it's Independence Day. I know we're always talking about sports and Tar Heels, but I just think it's fun to share some life stuff sometimes. So I'm not going to do it at the lead of the show, but I do want to share with you what I think are some of my favorite Independence Day traditions. I'd love to know yours. Would you share them with me as well? I'm going to just give you 5 of mine. I'm sure there's others I could pull, but I want to give you 5 of my favorites. Number 5 is a combination of a baseball game and the fireworks show after it. And I know a lot of baseball teams do a fireworks show like every Friday night or whatever, but it's just different and bigger on July 4th. And so I love the opportunity to go to a baseball game and then stick around afterwards. They turn out all the lights and you get to see fireworks or really any fireworks show. Like I remember one time when I was in high school, my aunt and uncle, we got to go out on a boat with them and watch the fireworks in their town from in the middle of a lake. It was really cool. So love those professional fireworks shows, but love doing it in the context of a baseball game. Number 4 for me, this is the first of 2 food things, is watermelon. I like watermelon. I just don't often think of it all that much, but there's just something in my brain that associates it so much with the July 4th cookout, of like, hey, eat your hot dogs, hamburgers, get your chips, drinks, whatever. And then at the end of it, you have some watermelon. And man, it's just a fun thing and a cool way to connect those 2 things. I know you eat watermelon all summer long, but I just really look forward to it on July 4th. Number 3 on my list is a dessert, homemade ice cream. I don't know what it is. I can't remember if it's like my family made homemade ice cream sometimes on July 4th, or maybe parties we were at somebody else did. But I'm talking about like the old school, not electric thing, but where you had to like hand crank it and you had rock salt and going like, man, absolutely loved that. Thought it was so cool. And so homemade ice cream on July 4th is just a combination that goes well together. Number 2 on my list is watching Wimbledon. I grew up, as I talked about earlier, was born in England. My parents were missionaries. And so grew up in England, and my family loves tennis. And so Wimbledon was like the crown jewel of that. And so there's just, it was a connection always had. In particular, I remember my mom was a teacher, and so we'd sit around and watch Wimbledon together in the summer when I was out of school. And so there's just, it's a neat connection to think about Wimbledon and July 4th and us beating Britain. So there's that. And then number 1 on my list of my favorite things, traditions on Independence Day, is watching Independence Day. That movie came out when I was probably like around 10 years old. But man, Will Smith and Jeff Goldblum and the president's speech towards the end of the movie and all of Randy Quaid's funny lines, like it's just, I'm sure, I know it's a movie that probably doesn't hold up great and is silly and has some cheesy one-liners and whatever, but still, I love it. And I just love watching it on July 4th. My kids are 7 and 4, and I can't wait till they're old enough to introduce them to it. Speaking of my kids, my least favorite thing that happens on Independence Day is where I live in Missouri. We don't have any like laws or legislation against fireworks at people's homes and stuff. And so this whole past weekend, people are just blowing up fireworks, basically blowing up their money all around our house. And it's like, it wakes up your kids and it's so loud. And oh goodness, I love going to a fireworks display, but all the people, oof, too much. Anyway, that's it. I want to hear your list. I would love to see it. Folks, that's it for today's episode of Locked On Tar Heels. We'll be right back with you tomorrow. I know it's a holiday week, but I want to keep giving you all the content so you can stay locked in. If you would, go leave the show a review, 5 stars on Apple Podcasts or anywhere else you can do that. You can follow the show on Twitter at Locked On Heels. You can follow me at Isaac Schade. If you want to email the show, lockedontarheels@gmail.com. Would love to have more in-depth conversation with you there. Don't forget to subscribe, smash the like button, and leave your comments. Hey, it's always a great day to be a Tar Heel. We'll be right back with you tomorrow, but until then, peace.